Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. During this season of Tent Talk, we're bringing you episodes about growing where you're planted, maximizing the success and impact of your market or market businesses by focusing on your own resources and the power of your community.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by you. When our listeners subscribe to our offerings at farmersmarketforum.com or register for Intents, the National Farmers Market Conference, they not only gain access to valuable information and networking, they also support production of this podcast. We've produced 350 plus episodes of Tent Talk over the last 7 years, providing free content for farmers market managers and participants, and we couldn't have done it without you. Register now for the 10th annual 2026 Intense Conference at farmersmarketpros.com and sign up for regular updates at farmersmarketforum.com today.
All right, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. We are talking in this newest season about growing where we're planted and making use of the resources that we have now and the coalitions that we can foster and develop to make our markets and businesses thrive and grow. It's application season.
It's
for many of us.
Application season. Whether you're a seasonal market and just launching your cycle this month for a spring opening date, or a year-round market refreshing and updating.
Yep.
We're all talking applications right now. So let's talk about collaborative approaches that can help both managers and vendors and how to make this thing sing.
Yep, exactly. And always, like, as year-round markets, I think we've always said, like, oh, we don't have like an application like date or like it's not open a certain time of year. But I have found just over the years that usually the beginning of the year, I have some vendors that kind of like made it through the last year and they were kind of thinking like hemming and hawing over their business and they wanted to like not muscle through because that sounds like they didn't like it, but like kind of get through the holiday season. And then they've kind of made the decision to either move or close their business or transition their business to something else. So I do have a little shakeup in the markets.
Yeah, this is one of the times of year that I see that too. Yeah. I usually see it either like early first part of the year, right after the holidays.
Yep.
And then we tend to have another little kind of reckoning, I think around when school starts. So like August, September, people are just changing their habits and they're deciding to go one direction or another. But this is the big time of year I see too, where somebody's decided to make the jump into wholesale or they're going to open a brick and mortar or they're going to get a day job.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a little shakeup. And I usually see like some folks that have been with the market for a really long time just coming to the end of their business life cycle. You know, if they've been at the market for 10 plus years and they kind of started when they were a little older anyways, and they're just kind of like fading out in just a natural way. And so that happens. Usually they try to get through one more holiday season and then they make that decision. So I do see some shakeup in the beginning of the year. I'd say I usually see like 3 points during the year where things happen application wise. Beginning of the year, I get like what you said, when school starts, kind of end of summer, where I kind of have space to maybe bring some new folks in. I also get a huge influx of applications at the year-round market, like at the beginning of summer, when everyone's like, "Ooh, summer, it's going to be so busy," and they're trying so hard to get in. And it's like, I usually don't have vendors leaving at the beginning of summer because the vendors that are there, they know that they want to make it through the busy summer season, at least here in Southern California. So I kind of see that even with the year-round market, we don't say like a specific date is really maybe an application opening, but it is the same as those seasonal markets where we see the influx and we're taking time to process applications at certain times of year.
Yeah, and I do see an uptick in applications at this time of year too. Again, year-round market, I always have my application open. That used to be the case for your big market, but I know you've got it closed right now and it's more of a wait list thing. But this time of year, we see more people applying for the same reason as we see vendors maybe phasing out. I think people say, oh, I'm not going to make a big change to my life during the holidays. I think that's just natural for all of us. But first of the year, I'm going to make that resolution I'm going to start that business I've been thinking of all this time. So that's when people really launch things. And so we see a lot more applications this time of year too.
Oh, definitely, which is great because I have a little bit of space and I'm getting some cool new applications. So yeah, timing is I definitely see folks that are re-energized to move, to take that next step with their businesses.
Yeah, for sure. So busy with applications, how can we make that all work more smoothly? And there's a number of ways.
Yes, and we've been talking about that a lot. just with other market managers and amongst ourselves to always kind of fine tune our applications for our markets. So what are some things that we discovered are kind of big ticket things to watch when you're doing that?
Well, I think one of the things we've learned over time, and actually we're excited that we're going to be addressing this specifically at the Intense Conference, which is 6 weeks away, folks. If you haven't registered yet, jump on it. Be sure to get your hotel reservation in and all that. But Avery Reynolds from the Vancouver Farmers Market in Washington is going to give a whole session on aligning your market values and acceptance criteria into your application and into the application form and the informational piece that goes through it. Because being clear about your market's mission is the very first step to creating an application process that makes sense. Are you farm and grocery forward? And hopefully you're farm forward if you're calling it a farmer's market. If you're not, if that's not your thing, maybe consider calling it a community market. Is it not a grocery and farm prioritized market? Maybe it's first and foremost a community resource and gathering place. So we know a market manager that runs a market in North Carolina she says she's hyper inclusive when it comes to applications. If there's somebody making crocheted products that are more loving hands at home than they are an actual business, she says, let them in anyway. Everybody likes to see their neighbors at the market, and she has plenty of room, and so that works for her. Rural areas might have more of a need for prepared food and food trucks. They don't have a lot of restaurants around like we do in urban areas. So maybe there's a lot of farmers in your area. And so you have some farmers there, but a lot of them are growing their own food. So that's not their biggest need. But you want to make sure that on that Thursday afternoon or on that Saturday, you've got a lot of people making prepared food and things that folks can pick up because they don't have the restaurant options that we do around our market.
Yep, exactly. And I think it's just knowing your market and what you want for your market. You don't have to emulate other markets that are going on even around you or markets that you really admire. It's what are you trying to develop and curate for your own market? And then kind of get that idea really dialed in so that you can convey it and the messaging can be clear to vendors that are applying because they want to know, what kind of market is this? Is this a market where I would be a candidate to be a vendor?
Yeah, and that saves everybody time and heartache and and stress. If they know what you're looking for very specifically, then they know whether or not they've got a good chance of getting a spot at the market. And they maybe don't spend time applying to your market. Maybe they look at a market that's a better fit for them.
Exactly. Yes. Like saving everyone the time. So yeah, I think dialing in your application so it's really clear. And then also part of that is kind of evaluating your market's current offerings and where there are gaps in what you're offering and maybe where there's oversaturation. So you're maybe kind of let that category, like not add anybody new in that category. And if someone leaves in that category, you're not necessarily filling that space with the same category. And I just had that recently at my market in Little Italy. We have a really big market, but we're in a really dense restaurant district. So I don't have a lot of prepared food there. We never have. There's really great restaurants in the district. We're not there to compete with restaurants in the neighborhood. So anytime a prepared food vendor does leave the market, which happens extremely infrequently, the vendors all talk to each other and they all want to come in and fill that space. And so that did happen recently, but I'm actually just not filling that space with a prepared food vendor because I just want to beef up some more grocery vendors. I'm saving space, as always, for more farms to come in. And so it's not really like a category for category because you have to come back to your mission. And the mission at that market is to be a grocery store in the street. So those kind of things happen too, but you just have to be clear about what is your messaging about that and what is your intention with the market.
For sure. I think there's a temptation, especially if you're a newer market and you've got space to fill, there's a temptation to just let the applications lead. So, I've got a whole bunch of these kind of applications. I'll just let them all in, even if that isn't really what your mission in terms of the design of the market and the needs of the customers are. So sometimes you just have to force yourself to say, hey, I'm going to grow a little bit slower. I don't necessarily need this many people in that kind of category. I'm going to wait. I'm going to keep, if you're a market that's really trying to emphasize farmers, I'm not going to fill this space with a crafter. I'm going to wait for a farmer, even if it takes me a little bit longer.
Yes. And we've said this before, and it's so hard for new market managers, I think, to be patient in that way. And it feels like your market's just never going to grow because it can grow really slowly when you're being very intentional about the categories that you're letting into your market. But we always say, just from our own experience running markets for a long time and talking to other market managers, if you grow with intention, your market will grow better and last longer because you're not filling all those spaces. It's much harder to ask a vendor to leave if later on you realize that they're not really fitting with your, categorically what you want the mission of your market to be, or if you were using them as a placeholder or something, I mean, that's not fair to the business. It's not fair to the market. It, can end up being a real sticky situation. So just really growing with intention and maybe not having a huge, as big of a market that you could have if you let all the applications come in, but just growing kind of slowly over time, it does make for a better market and a market that will last longer.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And I think we talked about this a lot the last time we did an application topic as a podcast
Hmm.
episode. That one was called Application Excavation. Say that 6 times fast. That was episode 252. So, as you know, there's 350 episodes in the archives. If you feel like binging, jump on in there. But that's another good one on applications. And I think we talked a lot there about how to curate, how to balance, how to create the market that you have the vision for.
Yeah. And speaking of that episode, I've said it before, but I include a link to that episode when I'm responding to folks who email me about participating in my markets. I usually, give them a list of other markets they can participate in because my application is for the most part not wide open to everybody. And I refer them back to these podcast episodes. So if you, as market managers, feel like this is helpful, please point your vendors to this episode just because sometimes it's easier for folks to listen to a deeper explanation than just getting a response in an email that says, no, we don't have room. So
Yeah.
it's easier for me to say, hey, if you know we don't have room, here's a couple of reasons why. If you need more of an explanation, you can listen to this podcast and really get an understanding as a vendor why these things are happening at markets. So
Yeah, which I think they appreciate.
yeah, for sure. We're here to educate.
That's right. So if you are a market that's new or growing, maybe you just got some additional space and you have a lot of space available, you kind of need to be selling to potential vendors. So you need to explain to them why your market is the best place to be. You won't have to let the applications lead you if you're being very specific and intentional and proactive in terms of marketing and telling people what kind of applications you're looking for, what kind of vendors you need in the market. So we've seen a lot of good social media posts announcing space available and the application dates and process right now. The more specific you can make that, I mean, I'm thinking of doing that. I don't have a lot of space left at my Sunday market, but I've got a little bit of space. And I want to be sure that I save those last 8 spaces and get us to the point where our footprint is full and we can't take any more vendors except, on a substitute basis. I'm trying to be really intentional about what I put in. I'm specifically looking for packaged grocery items, for instance. So I'm trying to say that when I publicize that we've got an open application and that we're looking for additional vendors. So the more specific you can be about that, the better.
Definitely. I think saying, I'm looking for this, you can even say, I'm not looking for this, because if you really are maxed out on jewelry vendors and you have maybe a long queue of wait list vendors in that category, just be really, transparent about that. So you don't have folks saying, oh, but what about jewelry? You can just say some things that you really are maxed out in. I mean, that's what I do. I say, I'm not looking for prepared food, like never looking for prepared food. But just being transparent and kind of break a little hearts, but at least the vendors will just know what's going on and not wonder.
Yeah, they can move on to a market where that's needed. For us, it's always, sorry, we're full on bakeries.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've got so many baked goods there.
Yeah. So it might be that you're full. It might be that you're full in certain categories of farms. You have a really robust farm neighborhood where your market is, and you have a lot of farms that are participating. And maybe you're looking for things like, hey, we'd love to have a coffee vendor here, or we would love to bring in some artisans. So just put a call out to what specifically you're looking for.
Yeah, I think so too. And then look at what it is that you need and look at who can help you find those folks. So if you need more farmers, and that tends to be what we're always open to is more farmers, reach out to the local farm bureau and to extension services in your area, or check around, see if you have an active grange. It's like the Elks Club kind of, but not really, but for farmers. See, they're all over. See if you have an active one in your area, or see if there's a local farm group that's on Facebook. We've found people that way.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of places you can go to look for specific categories of vendors and farmers. They seem to, be accessible through various groups. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for these things. This is why, this is the date and time. Be specific about, your market information. And folks are happy to get the word out for you. I have said, our ag department is really great they want to tell farmers that they have an opportunity for them.
Yeah, I think so too. Outreach to local commercial kitchens and kind of form partnerships where you refer vendors to them and they refer people to you that are ready to get their product out there and work. A lot of folks need to use a commercial kitchen to do menu testing and things. So sometimes they see them before we see them. They can point them our way.
Yep. Great idea.
And then you're trying to get a client. Your vendors and farmers are your clients. Sometimes you got to sell to them to get a new client. So let them know, why should someone join your market?
Yep. So what are you offering? Customer traffic? What's the customer traffic look like? If it's a brand new market, maybe that hasn't started yet, you can say, oh, these are the marketing efforts I'm doing. This is how busy this neighborhood is. There's other businesses in this neighborhood that are really busy. Kind of explain what you think the traffic's going to be there or what is going on at your market.
Yeah, in our Vendor 101 program, we tell new vendors, potential applicants, that they want to do a few things. Go to the market before you apply, see how it feels. Is it busy? Does it feel like it's growing? Are customers happy? So they'll probably be coming back and bringing more. Look at the market's social media. Is the market posting every week about their market and every day about their vendors and their farmers and things? If they're not, if they're just sitting there quietly and maybe putting up one post the day of the market, they're not going to grow as fast. Their customer base isn't going to grow as fast. And that helps you evaluate, is the market doing what markets mainly do for farmers and vendors, which is do the marketing to pull customers there.
Yes. Is the market marketing? Are the customers going to be there for you?
Yeah, I'm always surprised. Sometimes I see markets that I know are wonderful. Either I've been there or maybe I've looked at their website or I've looked at somebody else's description of them. But on their own social media, they're constantly running just kind of hyper designed Canva things with their logo and their hours and no pictures of vendors or customers. And I always want to sort of message them and say, post some pictures of your vendors, post some farm produce, do something to tell people how lovely this market is and why your vendors would want to be there and why your customers would want to shop there.
Exactly. I've seen that too. I go to some like very lovely markets or I'll pop in, when I'm traveling and they're so wonderful. I take my own pictures. I try to like tag them in the photos and just be like, hey, you can use these pictures because they'll just use the same photo over and over again, which just seems like we don't know what that market looks like anymore, or they're just posting logos or things or like really close up photos. And it would do your market a service to show your customer what the market experience is like. They want, as a market shopper, when I travel, I want to see like, what's the vibe at this market? What's the background look like? Like, what do the vendors look like? What's the setup like? Just so I know, not really to make a determination like if I'm going to go or not, but just I want to get a feeling for it. So like you should be showing that to your customers. So as vendors, check out their social media. Are they showing that? And if not, you can, have a discussion with the market manager and say, oh, like what kind of marketing do you do at the market? What kind of following do you have and things like that? So kind of open that discussion there. But yeah, as market managers, we should be getting those visuals out.
Yeah, for sure. So your need for specific products is something else that you should broadcast. Say our customers have requested X because if you're a market manager, you have customers show up at the info booth every week and say, hey, where's the shrimp?
Yeah.
Or, you have the ones that say, where's the bananas? And there's not much you can do about that. But customers definitely request categories. Mention other vendors that are there consistently that are selling out. So you may need to add somebody in that category.
Yes, that's usually what I look for when I think about, okay, I have some open space at the market. What kind of vendor am I looking for? I think back as like working in the information booth. What are some things that people have been asking for that I've had to say, oh, we don't have that at the market right now? So just thinking about, mushrooms at the Wednesday market and just things that are like really category specific that people come and ask about that we just don't have. So those are the things I'm going to go look for in vendors.
Yeah, so smart. I mean, you're in that situation. You're a mature market that's really full. And so you need to be thoughtful about curating and nurturing applicants.
Yep.
I was very surprised to get into some groups and things in the last few, and I really was not aware of this at all until like 3 or 4 years ago when I was in a big Facebook group for farmers, that there are complaints amongst farmers and vendors. Oftentimes, honestly, those come from a farmer or vendor who's briefly been at a market that was not well managed.
Yeah.
Or that has just heard things from other people and haven't even been at markets. So I'm going to say, I have heard these things now. I realize them. I'm taking them to heart, but I also think that there's more than one view on this. But I got to say, it hurt my feelings when I was first reading it that there were farmers and vendors in there. I see this in cottage food groups a lot that are saying, well, those market managers, they're just gatekeeping. They just don't want us. Well, folks, we want farmers and vendors. That's what this whole thing is made up of. Without you, we don't have a market. We're not gatekeeping, but there are things that we have to deal with. We generally have a finite amount of space. We want to maintain market balance so that everybody who's there is successful. And sometimes we just don't have space to be a fully, I had somebody in a group I was in just a few days ago to say, you know what, it should just be free market. Anybody that wants to come should be able to come. And the ones that are good will last and the ones that aren't will fail. Okay, we definitely emphasize that markets should have a lot of choice, but one of the definitions of farmers markets is that they're an organized event that happens regularly, and there does have to be some organization if we want to make sure that we don't protect an underperforming vendor by not giving them any competition, but we also can't have a market that's 75% bakeries and 10% farmers, and then everybody else has to fit into the rest of those tiny spaces.
I'm just wondering which customers are coming to these markets that are a free for all. I mean, it'd be like funny to check out maybe a couple times or something, but it really, if there's no like structure and organization and balance and curation, that just the customers fall off those kind of markets. Because there are markets I think that I've been to that I, can kind of assume like, oh, they're just letting in anyone who applies, which, a lot of, as we discussed, like markets do, especially at the beginning. But it's like, I'm not going to like come back to this market because I don't need, 17 different kinds of pastry and 10 jewelry vendors and one farm. So if you want repeat customers and you want maybe a high volume of customers coming to the market that you're participating in as a vendor, it behooves you to have a really structured market with a good organizer, a good market manager. And so, yeah, also don't like the gatekeeping thing. It's like there's only a finite amount of physical space on the street. So I cannot, vendors will say, well, can I set up right there? And I'm like, that's like the ADA walkway. Like, no, you can't. Like, I know people come to the market and they're like, oh, there is space. And it's like, there is not space. If I say I don't have physical space on the street, that's not a line that I use to like get people to go away. It's that I don't have physical space on the street. I'll tell you, oh, we don't host your category. Like if someone's doing resale on whatever, I go, we just don't host that category. And like that's a no. Like that is an answer. So I think folks maybe are like hearing a response and they're not liking the response, or it's not what they thought the manager was going to say. And so they're kind of turning it into something else. It's like we can't run markets without vendors. So we're not like turning vendors away for no reason. We're not saying like, get out of here, vendors. Like you can't be in this club. Like club of who? Club of just market managers? Like I'm not a vendor. I don't sell anything. So I need you to be a part of this I need you to come and like be a part of this. But I just can't have everybody there, and I can't have just 3 different categories in a 6-block market. So yeah, I think it's just like a barrier of understanding. And I do get that there's a lot of confusion about how markets are organized and structured. It's very interesting to have a job that most people don't understand is a job.
Nobody even knows we exist.
I don't know we exist.
Spontaneously show up with their tents and throw them up neatly on the street.
It's really kind of sad and disheartening sometimes that I'll say, oh, I run markets for a living, and people say that's a job. And I'm like, hey, yes. I mean, if you're a vendor and you say, I make bread, people are like, cool, like that's a job, you make and sell bread. But it's like I run markets and people are like, what
do you
that?
sell?
Yeah, what do you sell? Anyways, but yeah, so I think from a vendor standpoint, like maybe just like we're not gatekeeping. Maybe this comes from some market managers who are like a little like rough around the edges or whatever, I mean, you have to be really tough to run a market. I don't think there's a lot of market managers that are just like sweet little, will take anything from anybody, because we have to like defend our position as market managers. We have to work with city. We have to work with like police department, fire department, type A personality business owners, farmers who are driving from far away to come to the market. And so they are making sure it's worth it for them. The neighbors of the market, the people who drive by the market, the people that cross the street at the market. It's like, we have to be just naturally kind of like tough people, and
or moms.
Being a parental figure is helpful. I think I use my mom skills more than anything, but also like in a nurturing way too. But I do think like it might seem like a market manager is like being dismissive of you or is not listening to, your pitch or whatever vendors are, having conversation when they're coming in to apply. But if vendors could maybe just take a little more like understanding, we have a lot of people coming to talk to us about getting in, especially if you're trying to get into like a big, busy market. And patience is helpful. I always say fill out the form. Like I never say no, don't do anything unless it's products that I don't host. But I say go fill out the form, because then I have your contact information and you'll be surprised. Sometimes I'll say, oh my gosh, my tea vendor left. I never thought I would need a tea vendor. I'm going to go look at this list and I'll contact you from that list. So it's like keep those things in mind when you're talking to market managers, and this is a partnership, and you guys, vendors really are our clients. So we want you to be happy and want you to come to us and talk to us and be at the market. So that's it. And this is a job. It's a real job.
It's a real job. It's so We work hard.
We work hard.
Well, and so I guess the answer from what we can do to help that situation and that perception as market managers is just really over explain
Yeah.
the finite amount of space and a need to have some market balance. We do encourage choices if we have space. Shoppers like choice, farmers and vendors like shoppers. That's kind of my motto. I, sew it on a sampler.
Yeah.
So that's important. But I do think that just so that everybody understands, you have a really good email because your market has been full for a while. So you've had a closed application. You're kind of doing straight to wait list and that kind of thing. But you do have a standard email that you send out that's pretty long that explains some of those points. This is why we don't have room. This is, what causes this. I expect we're going to hear that in Avery's presentation, how you do that kind of thing, even on the market intro sheet. But you do a really nice email when you're declining. I think you even say, nobody wants to hear this. I know, I'm sorry. Because, it's, they're so eager to get their business going. And then if there's not a space for them, they're discouraged. But then another thing that I think you include is you talk about suggesting other markets. And I do this too when I'm telling people that there's not room. So if you've got a local coalition of market managers, that can be just invaluable because you can refer applicants between you and you can look for an applicant in a specific category that you need.
Yes, exactly. I always include a list or like a link to the list of farmers market managers and contact information for other markets because I get applications or inquiries from folks that are really great vendors that look incredible. And I would love to have them at the market. I just don't have physical space. And yes, I want them to be on my wait list. But in the meantime, I don't want their business not to find a spot to vend and grow in the meantime, because when I'm ready for them, I want them to be in business. So I just want other markets to grow and have good vendors. So I just link to the list of farmers market managers. And I try to be very encouraging and say, please go look at pop-ups, go look at other markets, listen to this episode of the Tent Talk podcast. And then if they look like they're kind of just starting out, maybe don't have licenses and permits and things yet, I always point them to Vendor 101 so they can get like a good education about how to start as a farmers market vendor. But yeah, I do try to be encouraging just because I get very hopeful emails from people like, hey, I'd love to start this Saturday. What time should I be there? And it's like, I just, the worst part of my job is saying no. I have to say no to so many people and it's sad. But even with markets that are growing, like I've run markets that have been brand new with you and done vendor application processing. The Wednesday market, we had to restart after COVID and still grow. And I have a few spaces to fill there right now. So I am still looking for vendors, but it is just a different kind of, I'm very specifically curating. And so I am still saying no in that regard as well. But it's tough, but I think having a different direction to point folks that are applying, if they're not going to be a good fit for your market, giving them some other options for people to reach out to, or talking to other markets and saying, hey, I keep having a lot of bakeries apply. I've been full for a very long time. Are you guys looking for bakeries? What kind of bakeries? And maybe keep an eye out for each other. And then maybe you can be specific and say, hey, I know that this market in this other neighborhood is actually looking currently for a bakery. Here's the direct email address. Here's the market manager's name. And so that can be a real helpful for the vendor too, because then they kind of feel like they have a little in.
Well, and I think it's good to explain to brand new applicants in particular why a newer, growing, smaller market might be better for them as a starting point. Because a really big, mature market, you've got a whole bunch of vendors and farmers there that already have a following and that are they've been doing it for a while. So they're on top of their own social media and marketing, and they bring people through that very crowded market to their booth because you can get lost in there in a big crowded market. So, a newer, smaller market can be a better place to start. You have to explain that to people because they look at that huge crowd at a big market and think, oh no, I want to be there.
Yeah.
But it's tough to compete with the other farmers and vendors at those markets, and the overhead's higher because it's, costs more to run that big market. So the space rent's probably higher. So working through that is good. You do in that process want to explain that your smaller market is not necessarily the minor leagues for the larger one. It doesn't mean that if you have a good season there, you're automatically, that doesn't create space at another larger, fuller market. So, that's one of the things we have to explain to folks.
This is my constant battle, I think. And I know other markets that have 2 weekly, they have one during the week and then they have a big weekend farmers market. It's just vendors get in their heads that, oh, I'll do the weekday market. And then as soon as there's space on Saturday, or even if there's not a space that happens, I will just get into Saturday. The market manager will
invent more square footage.
Or kick somebody out that's been at the market for a long time and put me in since I'm doing the weekday market and this person is not. And it's just, I have had to like explain that many, many a time to many, many a confused face.
Yeah.
So while I understand that someone might think that automatically, that's not how the markets are run. And also if I don't have physical space, I don't have physical space. It's not going to appear just because you've started selling at the, my Wednesday market.
Yeah.
So yeah, speaking of getting insulted, I get insulted because I go, Wednesday is a good market and
On
it's
its own.
thriving and it's on its own. And I have vendors that are at Wednesday that don't want to do Saturday. They never ask me about Saturday. They love Wednesday. They're so happy. It's great. Or they'll sub in on Saturday once in a while and they'll say like, oh, never mind. That's like so chaotic. I don't even have time to make enough inventory for this market because it's just like a single person business, or it's such long hours. I mean, you have to get there so early. You get home at like 5 p.m. It's a long day. It's a weekend day. So they are two separate markets. So I think I might get more clear about that, on the website and on my application this year as well. But yeah, I mean, or if maybe your market is organized differently and you do start people out of your weekday market to see how they fare, and then you bump them up to a weekend market that you have space in. So again, just being transparent about what the order of operations is. There's always like a big vendor rumor mill that goes around, just like market managers. We all talk amongst ourselves and we know vendors do too. So just kind of clearing the air and not being so like secretive about what the real story is, I think is helpful.
Yeah. I think sometimes one vendor makes an assumption and then they say, oh, this is how that works. And then all of a sudden that becomes a quote unquote fact when it was
Yes.
never like that. So it's interesting.
Yep.
So for vendors and farmers that are trying to get into a market, whether it's a newer market that has a lot of space but is still carefully curating, or a big market that's mature that maybe will have space in your category, there are ways to make your application stand out. Have your ducks in a row with paperwork when you apply there. Understand what's required. We talk about this in Vendor 101 all the time. You knowing what you need is very helpful. If you skip application questions, market managers are going to wonder about how you'll keep up with the regulations and the market rules. So be ready. Respond quickly and fully to questions following the application. Again, if you apply and I respond to you and say, hey, this looks like it could be a good fit, where are you sourcing this ingredient for your product? Because if you've got a farm-based ingredient, a fruit or vegetable or eggs or whatever, we're looking for people who, even in prepared foods and packaged groceries, are using local farm ingredients. So if I ask that question and then I don't get an answer for 3 months, and then they come back and say, oh, well, I'm getting it at Restaurant Depot, or even if they come back and say, oh, I'm getting it from such and such farm, it's been 3 months. So I'm going to think to myself, boy, if you're in the application process, it's like your first date with somebody, presumably you're on your best behavior. And you take 3 months to respond to me, how are you going to respond to me once you're in the market and I have something important that I have to express to you?
Yeah.
So do that.
Yes. And I think we talk a lot in that other episode as well, the application excavation, about personality being a major thing that we're looking for in applications as well. And personality and professionalism. How are you responding? Are you answering questions? Are you understanding what we're asking you? Do you understand that regulations exist at markets? How does it feel like you're going to follow those rules? Because honestly, I've had folks come to me and maybe I have space in that category and they have a really good product, but just not getting the vibe that they understand they have to respond to my questions about permitting, insurance, sourcing, all of those things. And they're kind of blowing it off. Well, I'm not going to put you in the market. I'm not going to deal with that. I have enough on my plate to deal with. So even if I might like nurture along and be like, hey, like I need you to answer this. But if they're just really blowing it off and just want to come in and set up at the market and just be at the market and not really talk to me, that's not going to work. So it's just, again, it's a partnership. So be ready to be in a conversation with the market manager and pay attention to questions and make sure that you have the answers. Or if not, you say, hey, oh, maybe I'm not quite ready for this. Do you have any resources for that? Again, Vendor 101, we usually point folks to, or, other markets that they could start in, get on the ground floor and then kind of work up to a bigger, busier market. But I think having the conversation is important, but just make sure that you're kind of paying attention and understanding that the organizer is there to facilitate the success of the entire farmers market. And we're not looking at just the success of your business as an isolated, part of the market. We're looking at it as a whole. So to bring you in is going to be, more of a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to set the gauge on your entrepreneurial, independent mind, which so many small business owners have and have to have to make it a success. You got to set that gauge to cooperation.
Yep.
Because your attitude, your product quality, your presence and consistency is going to affect the whole market. If somebody has a negative impression about a vendor, they tend to, that kind of moves over to their impression of what their experience is like at the market. So you need to understand that the market manager is protecting not just your experience, but the experience of all the customers and all the other vendors that are selling there.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly it. And I think if vendors kind of stop and think about it, they'll understand that too, because they want their customers to have a good experience. But they just need to understand that they're part of a team and that we all need to play together and take care of each other. You know, the vendors are really great about pointing customers to other vendors within the market. It's that kind of system and family that we have going on at a farmer's market. Farmer's market is a very special place. It is not like any other kind of place that you can have a small business. We are really interconnected, even though it's a bunch of independent businesses. So we're there to facilitate success for everybody.
That's right. Be clear about your availability and your commitment level. Be ready to go.
Yep, that's good. Yeah, we're seeing so many great posts from markets announcing their applications right now. And while farmers and vendors may not realize it, most managers who have been doing this for any length of time just really find helping launching a new business at their markets one of the most fulfilling parts of the job. And seeing one fail is definitely most heartbreaking. It's so sad for us, so we don't want that for you. We want you to start and learn and thrive. It's good for you, and it strengthens our markets to have consistent quality vendors. So together, let's keep growing a farmers market community that lets our neighbors buy food better and eat better food.
Thanks for listening today. And big thanks to all of you who attend Intense, the National Farmers Market Conference, for coming together and using our hive mind to take farmers markets everywhere to a whole new level. Join us in San Diego, California on March 1st through 4th, 2026, to explore the future of farmers markets. Click Register Now on the homepage at farmersmarketpros.com, and we'll see you there.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in for another great episode.